Hi everyone, I'm Rose Martin. We are right around the corner at Claytor Lake with the author of the Domestic Diva series, Paws and Claws, the new Pen and Ink series, and who am I talking about? Of course, New York Times bestseller, Krista Davis. She is so much fun. She actually does love pets, and she does love to cook, and she loves sweets. So what's not to love about her, right? Hi Krista, welcome to Right Around the Corner.
Hi Rose. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Well, you know, you love cats, you love dogs, you love cooking and sweets, and this beautiful location. Thank you for inviting us.
We have to thank my former sister-in-law for letting us use her house on Claytor Lake. It's just such a lovely site.
Oh, it certainly is, and I'm sure it would be great writing inspiration being here too.
It is for outdoors books, yes. Yes, for the Paws and Claws series, it helps a lot. All I have to do is take a walk and I get all kinds of ideas.
So I read that you write as a secondary job because you're a chef to your pets first and a dog walker. What's that?
Well, I have a lot of dogs and cats. At the moment, I have lost a few, I'm sorry to say, but I do cook for my dogs. I had a dog who was allergic to so many foods. He couldn't eat grains and he couldn't eat root vegetables. It was
Really?
the strangest things, no carrots, no potatoes, no. So I had to learn to cook for them, and that's how I came to putting recipes in the Paws and Claws books. They really are recipes that I make for my dogs every day, and well, what can I say? They're a little spoiled.
Oh, well, anyone who has a pet, I know I've got a little boxer, but she's not little, she's spoiled too. But so, and Carol, the co-producer with us here, Carol is a cat lover. So when we were talking about Paws and Claws, I've got the paws and Carol's got the claws.
Oh, that's
so
cute.
we'll talk about that a little bit later. Growing up, were you always a voracious writer or reader? Where'd that come from?
I started very young, I have to say. I loved books. The first one that I remember really grabbing me really was Nancy Drew. It sounds like a cliche, but it really was. I was just enthralled with Nancy
agree.
Drew. And I was lucky to have a lot of very good teachers who encouraged me to read. My parents took me to the library, and reading was a big deal at our house. My parents were very, very supportive of that. And I remember, even as a child, sitting at my little window and looking outside at the very boring street that we lived on and thinking that books could take you anywhere. They can introduce you to people that you would never meet otherwise, in different kinds of lifestyles. There are all sorts of things that you can even go to the moon. So I was very impressed with books at a very young age, I really was. But then I sort of hit a spot sort of around college where I thought maybe I'd better get a career that will make some more money.
And what was that first career?
My first career, actually, I worked in a lot of hotels as management, and that was just fun. It really was. I loved every minute. Every day was different. You never knew what was going to happen. But eventually I came back to writing and started writing again.
Is that where you became a people watcher?
Definitely.
At the hotels?
Oh, you wouldn't believe what people do. People are fascinating. They are the most unbelievable creatures. They wad up paper and stick it up Coke machines and light it on fire. I mean, really? Why would anybody do that? So yes, it was quite an experience. In fact, I had one day where they came and looked for me because I was a woman and everybody else in management was a man, and they wanted me to go through the ladies' rooms and look for bombs.
Oh my.
And I remember a bomb threat had been called into the hotel. And I remember thinking, would I know what a bomb looked like if I saw it? You know, so I'm in the ladies' room looking around. I had no idea what I was looking for. Fortunately, nothing happened. Everybody was lined up. The whole management was lined up, just crossing
Story
their
idea
fingers.
right there.
It is,
Has it made it into one of your books?
It hasn't made it into a book, but it might.
It just might. Oh, how fun. And I also read that in high school, you talked about having great teachers, that they actually let you do independent studies.
I did do independent studies in high school, yes. They even let me do American women writers studies. I did an independent study class on them, and it was just fantastic that they were so versatile and let me do something like that. But even in grade school, I remember having teachers. One teacher gave me the Scarlet Letter to read
in
the 7th grade. And I'm not sure that I really grasped all of the nuances there, but I got the gist of it. And so I had a lot of teachers who were very forward thinking. And I think I was very lucky to have that.
Well, it seems like that exposure to so many different characters brought you to the point that you create characters beautifully in your books.
Thank you.
And you can tell you take a lot of time. As Carol and I were talking about it, we actually like know what the foods are that your animals are eating in some of the stories, and we can picture the people and what they're actually going to look like and how they're going to behave. I'd also read that you consider the plot the most important and you do that first, but yet your characters seem to be so beautifully developed. Is that really true?
Thank you. I really do try to have fully rounded characters. I have to be able to see them in my own head. Otherwise, you know, they're kind of stick figures. So you really have to see what they are and who they are and what they're thinking. And you need to know how they're reacting to the murder, obviously. That's a really crucial part. I do think the plot is the most important. I get bored if there isn't much of a plot. And one of my editors actually gave me the nickname Twisty Christie because I was writing such twisted plots, and I had 2 books in a row that were just very complicated. And sometimes, you know, it's easy to write yourself into a corner and think, uh-oh, what have I done here? But so far it has worked out for me, and I do like a plot that moves and has some unusual twist to it.
Well, and you can tell that because your books are engaging and they're so fun to read. But the journey wasn't overnight for you, was it? It took a while.
It took me 10 years to sell a book. And back in those days, of course, there was no self-publishing. That was not even an option. No one was self-published, and Amazon didn't even, if they existed, it was, you know, on the margin. So yes, you had to go to a publisher, you had to have an agent, and it took me 10 years to sell a book. And then, well, 10 years later, here we are.
Right, and that first book, it was really a happy and a sad time, right? Because you were getting a call from your agent, and we had a horrific experience, a horrific event right here in our region.
It was really awful. I got the call that they had sold The Diva Runs Out of Time on the same day as the massacre at Tech. And for most authors, that's a really fantastic day. And they scream and they cheer and they break up in the champagne. We were glued to the TV, of course, just like everyone else, because everyone knows somebody at Tech. And it was just horrible. And the number of people dead, just, it kept mounting and mounting. And my parents were there with me in the house, and the phone rang, and there's my agent saying, "Congratulations, you sold a book." And of course, she's in New York. She knows nothing about what's going on with Tech.
And it was 10 years in the making to make this happen for you, right?
Exactly, exactly. And I could not believe that something so good could happen to me on a day when so many people lost their lives.
Everyone was
just
so
tragic.
touched, right? Our lives were touched.
Yeah, we really were.
If you think about this writing career and this path to the Diva series, were you one of those little girls that was a diva?
No, I don't think so. Maybe.
How about your mom? Now, you told me she's 90 and she's living with you now. Would she give a little bit of a different answer?
No, I don't think so. I think I came from a very sensible family. You know, there weren't any such things as ghosts, and, you know, just behave yourself. My parents were immigrants from Europe. And they were very strict in terms of, you know, you sit at the table with the adults and you don't wiggle. It was just, you know, you knew what was expected of you. So I wouldn't say that I was a diva. Maybe a little bit of a princess, but really not like you see today.
So then maybe this is your way to say, I am a diva now.
Well, in a way I am, I guess. I think, though, that the whole diva thing is really the diva lifestyle. And when I say that, I mean like Martha Stewart. My mother and her friends, I think, were the original domestic divas. They all watched Julia Child, and they took great pride in what they baked. My mother, honest to goodness, baked a cake every Saturday morning of her life.
Oh,
my life, anyway. And I asked her once why she did that, and she said, well, because somebody might come by.
Oh, just to be ready.
And people did. We almost always had somebody with us on Saturday afternoon or Sunday afternoon. So we had lots of company, and her friends brought incredible dishes, and they all had gardens, and they just took a lot of pride in all of those things that Martha Stewart made a business out of.
And I read that you were looking kind of like the antithesis of Martha Stewart with real simple. How can I get in there? How can I do it? How can I make it good and tasty?
I was. Before they bought The Diva Runs Out of Time, I had submitted another proposal. And the editor called and asked, will this appeal to readers of Real Simple? And I had no idea what it was. So I ran out to the CVS, and I realized when I picked it up, it's Martha Stewart, except simpler. That's all. And that was how I got the idea of the two divas, one who likes things sort of over the top, and the other one who likes to keep things simple. And that was the book that they wound up buying, of course, eventually. And I have a lot of fun with it. When they bought the book, though, they told me that there were two caveats. One was Natasha could not be a caricature. And secondly, she and Sophie had to be friends. And that was the toughest order of all. Because I really had planned for Natasha to be sort of the evil one. And she really can't be. Now, she's a little bit eccentric, and she's driven. She's really driven. She's so focused on herself that she just doesn't see anything else.
And I pick up on that. It's like she wants to find her place.
She needs to.
Whereas Sophie's confident, cool, and calm. And I'm amazed reading your books that, you know, she just will open up a refrigerator, decide to whip up something, put it in for a while, and she's off doing something else. I'm thinking, you know, that would take me all day. That I wouldn't just kind of fill in whipping up a little chocolate torte and having raspberries ready to go and just tossing it in there and ready to go. Let's talk about the recipes for a second. Where do they come from?
Well, I make them up. Some of them have been family recipes that we've made over the years. And sometimes I just get an idea in my head and I think, oh, that sounds great. I'm going to make that. Sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
Right.
The ones that don't get scrapped and something else goes in instead.
So you actually make all the recipes?
I
You
do
test
make all
them.
the recipes. 2 weekends ago, I had 3 pies in my refrigerator because I was finishing up the Diva Sweetens the Pie, and so I was trying everything. And we're still going through pies.
So maybe you are a little like your mom, just in case someone comes over, you'll have something ready to serve.
This is actually for the book. I really do test the recipes. I know some people probably think that I don't, but I do test them and make sure that they're good, which means that we eat and eat and eat.
How fun. You know, it's all research.
The first pie that I made for the Diva Runs Out of Time, I made that 7 times. I could not get it exactly right. And I had new neighbors. And, you know, after you've eaten the same pie for, say, 2 or 3 times, you really don't want much. You know, you just want a little sliver to taste. And I kept bringing them pies. And I think they thought, wow, this is terrific.
Does she own a bakery? Why do we get so much pie?
Yeah, it was very funny. It was a nice way to meet new people.
Oh, that's fun. So how do you decide which recipes then go into which books? Like the recipes are part of, you know, the story ahead of time, or does the story unfold and you're thinking, oh, I've got a recipe for that?
As I'm writing the books, the recipes sort of crop up. And each one is a little bit different. For instance, Sophie, there are themes to the Domestic Diva series. If it's Christmas, there will be Christmas recipes. If it's Thanksgiving, Thanksgiving recipes. In the Coloring Crook and the Pen and Ink series, Florrie bakes, but she doesn't really cook much. So those will be mostly baked goods that she takes either to the bookstore or shares with friends. And then, of course, at the inn, where Holly lives in the Paws and Claws series, those are either restaurant type things that they would serve. Sometimes they're like from a diner. There are a lot of breakfast recipes in those books, and of course recipes for dogs.
Of course, there has to be recipes for dogs. So let's go back to Natasha and Sophie, and the fact that where does Krista fall? A little Natasha, a little Sophie, combo of both?
Krista is definitely Sophie. No question about it. I am definitely on the easier side of things. I'm more likely to go out and cut flowers from my garden rather than create a huge bouquet like Natasha would. But I know a lot of people who really relate to Natasha, and they really want to be very, very precise. I'm one of those people who thinks, well, if the pie doesn't look perfect, that's okay. It means it's not from a bakery. You know, that little artisan touch is a good thing. But there are people who want it to look absolutely perfect, and those are the Natasha types.
So when you're researching a new book, some of your research, like we talked about the pies, that's going on behind the scenes. So people might not really realize how much research you put into the Diva series or Paws and Claws or your new pen and ink.
I think a lot of people think that I don't research at all, but there's a great amount of research that goes into these books. One of my favorites was The Ghost in Mrs Muir. And
I remember that.
Muir is M-E-W-E-R. And there was so much research because it had to do with ghosts. And I was really interested in the topic. It was just something that interests me on a personal level. Do they exist or do they not exist? So I did an enormous amount of research. I even went to the St. Albans Sanatorium and went through their ghost walk to see if any ghostly things would happen, which was fascinating. I took a girlfriend with me, and when we left, I said to her, well, did you feel cold air? Did anybody touch you on the shoulder? Because that was what they told us to expect. And she said, no, it was just a beautiful building that, you know, is in a bad state of disrepair. Well, a year later, the book was about to come out, and so I went through the pictures that I had taken. And my father had worked at St. Albans for a while. And so in his department, being a dutiful daughter, of course, I took pictures. There was nothing there. I mean, literally just bare walls. And there was one cabinet with the door hanging open, nothing else. I mean, just empty. And in the pictures, in the room where the cabinet is hanging open, there's a fog. It's not in the previous pictures, it's not in the later pictures, but in that one room, there was a fog. And I was just blown away. So I still don't know if they exist or not. I'm on the fence, but there are things that are hard to explain, and it was fascinating doing the research for those.
How long does it take you to come up with, from the beginning of your book until it hits the press and you're ready to let us all read it?
Definitely at least a year. The publishers would like more, but with 3 series going on, I'm always a little bit late, so they're having to just deal with me. But yes, it definitely takes an entire year for me to have the concept, write the book, send it to the editors. It gets copy edited, then it goes back again. And you have no idea how many eyes see it before it goes out.
And do you work on multiple series simultaneously, or do you like stick with the Diva and you finish Diva and then
I do one at a time.
You do one at a time.
Absolutely. Okay. I may have thoughts like, oh, that would be such a great idea for the other series. And I'll make a little note and then I'll go on with one. I really can't focus on 2.
Okay, so the Diva series, I love it. And I think it's fun that you open it with the letters, with a little bit of an advice column, a little, you know, Dear Abby, but with 2 different voices, with Natasha and Sophie. How did you come up with that idea?
That actually came from the series that wasn't sold, the one that didn't fly with the publisher. It was going to have sort of an advice thing about money. And I thought, well, wouldn't that be fun to do about cooking and decorating and that sort of thing. So it kind of rolled over from that other series that didn't fly.
Interesting. And you're a fan of Project Runway. Do we have a fashion series coming up?
Project Runway. Oh, I love it so much. No. Okay. I am not a fashionista. I am in awe of what they can make.
I am too.
I'm just, it blows me away. You know, how can someone make a dress out of candy that looks so good that I want to buy it and wear it?
Right. Exactly.
That's amazing.
Exactly. So the characters that you revisit in the Diva series, you've got, of course, the 2 central ones, Sophie and Natasha. And then how about the others? Do they come from real life people, or who are they?
Most of them are characters that just come to my mind, but I do sometimes create characters out of people that I see.
Yay.
Sometimes it's
because you're a people watcher.
I am a people watcher. Sometimes it's someone I see in a store. Sometimes it's someone that I see a photo of. A few photos have really inspired characters for me. And one character, Nina Reed Norwood, is actually a character who was invented by 3 of my roommates from Hollins University.
Oh, really?
When I was writing my first book, they asked me to read them a chapter, and when I got to Sophie's best friend, they screamed, no, 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 it has to be one of us. And I said, but it can't be, because then the other 2 would be angry. Well, they sat down that night and came up with the character of Nina Reed Norwood. That's their middle names all together.
Oh, isn't that fun?
She has features of each of them, but she isn't any one of them.
Oh. So when Diva cooks up a storm, it's interesting because I had no idea that bees set off some kind of a scent to chase you. And I thought, I had no idea. Was that another little point of research, or do you have your own little bee story?
My dogs.
Oh.
I can thank my dogs. I was sitting outside just like we are right now,
Right.
and all four of them came racing around the corner, and I had no idea what was going on until I saw the bees on them. I mean, really following them, and they must have followed
That's
them
scary.
at least 500 feet. It was a long way.
That is really
Yeah.
scary.
Yeah.
The other thing I found interesting was all the different types of funeral etiquette.
Me too.
To where, you can't do it this way, you've got to do it this way. And you think, true, that cultures are really different with how we deal with things like that, and then how we pay our respects, right?
They absolutely are. And Natasha was just so perfect for that, because she's such a stickler for doing everything the right way, the proper way. And what do you do when you think that the person that you're bringing everything to is the killer?
Exactly.
I mean, do you still bring food to the killer?
No, you don't. You don't. All right, let's turn to the coloring series. How clever to have these covers that people can color. Where'd that come from?
My editor. It was completely her idea. My agent called me up one day and she said, I have a suggestion for a new series, but you must promise to keep it completely under your hat. You may not breathe a word of it to anybody. Well, at that point, who's not going to say, yes, tell me about it?
Right.
So I was prepared to say no. I had the word poised on my lips.
Right.
And she said, you can color the cover. And I just said yes.
Oh, I love it.
I did too.
And I love Flori in this series.
Thank you.
And she's got some great adventures. And I actually went back to the beginning of the book because there's a true story about something she finds at a yard sale, and I was thinking to myself, I need to visit more yard sales this summer because she has obviously got a great eye. But I went back, and there actually is the Florist coloring book.
It actually existed, yes, in the 1800s, and we know, in fact, the quote in the beginning of the book that came from the 1600s, and it talks about how it's recommended that fine people of leisure color because it's good for the brain. And we know that now, but they've known it since the 1600s. It's amazing to me. It really
And it's
is.
become so popular that now we're looking for adult coloring books. And it's
Absolutely.
become such a great business that people are doing it almost to be a little therapeutic, right?
Yes, absolutely. Yes.
So Flori's has this amazing bookstore, and her friends get involved in some different kinds of capers. And as I said earlier, we just absolutely love her. Would you be willing to read something for us?
I would be.
And set it up for us.
Okay. Flori has just gotten to work.
And this is from?
This is from the Coloring Crook. But she has just carried a mug of coffee and a honey bun up to her boss on the 3rd floor. While he was brilliant, Maxwell loathed confrontations, and he had the most peculiar habit of being oblivious about the time of day, which was something I couldn't comprehend. I was a stickler for being on time and couldn't resist collecting clocks that I found interesting. He sat at his desk holding a section of the newspaper in his hand. Flori, my dear, thank you. He eagerly accepted the coffee and drained it by half. Look at this. He handed me the newspaper. It was folded to a tiny article that most people wouldn't even notice. The headline read, Orso Released. Professor Maxwell grimaced. Over 2 decades ago, Orso Muscello drove a van that was picking up priceless items to be delivered at a local museum. Like an armored truck? Quite the opposite. He was a trusted man who understood the value of antiquities. The belief is that it's far safer to transport such items in a regular vehicle that doesn't call attention to itself. Professor Maxwell grinned at me. Every day there are vehicles passing this bookstore that contain amazing things, but only a handful of people know that the driver isn't just an ordinary fellow off to work. There are priceless and sometimes even dangerous items hitching a ride. For instance, if I had a couple of gold bars to be delivered to the bank, I might ask you to drive them over because no one would think a thing about it. You're not sending me anywhere with bars of gold, are you? He laughed. Not today. Anyway, after the precious cargo was received and unpacked, it was discovered that 4 items had gone missing. Among them was a small sunflower painting by Van Gogh that my father was lending to a museum for an exhibit. It has never been found. Everyone hoped Orzo would tell us what he did with the stolen goods, but he kept his mouth shut. It was insured, wasn't it? The professor became grim. Human error. The museum was supposed to insure it during transit, but the gentleman who should have signed the insurance document was out with the flu, so it was never processed. As you might imagine, there was a big legal fuss. The museum paid a token amount with a caveat that should the items be found, they would be returned to their rightful owners, which would be you. You're hoping this Orso fellow will talk now? I asked doubtfully. He has served his time. If he were a good man, he would reveal the whereabouts of the items. Of course, if he were a good man, he wouldn't have stolen them to begin with. Uh-oh. If I knew the professor as well as I thought, he would embark on a search of his own. So what are you going to do? He took the newspaper from me and slapped it on the desk a few times. That is what I've been contemplating this morning. What would you do if you had been released from prison? I thought for a moment and understood where he was going with that question. I guess I wouldn't have any money, so I would collect the goods from where I stashed them and sell them. Precisely. After all those years in the slammer, he probably doesn't have any funds, not to mention the difficulty of getting a job. He'll be headed wherever he hid them. Please don't tell me you intend to follow him. No, my dear, I intend to wait until he offers them up for sale. A pity, really. The sale of stolen goods will land him back in prison.
Oh, you know, Krista, I don't know which book I like the best.
Oh,
they leave you
thank
with
you.
such great characters and such great stories. You have been a delight.
Thank you so much for coming here and
It's
inviting
been
me.
wonderful having you.
Thanks.
So again, special thanks to Krista Davis, all of her books, the Domestic Diva series, Paws and Claws, and of course the Pen and Ink series, and all about Florist. If you want to learn more about Krista, her books, or some of these storylines, make sure to check out our extended conversation online. So special thanks to Krista Davis and also to you for spending your time with us. Please tell your friends about us. And I'm Rose Martin, and I hope to see you next time right around the corner.
Production funding for Right Around the Corner provided by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Anne Ray Foundation, and by viewers like you. Thank you.